big news from Australia overnight. Mark Wood is fit for the first Ashes test after scans cleared him of any concerns over a hamstring injury. But there's a big blow for Australia with Josh Hazlewood ruled out of the match in Perth. And to discuss this and more, we can speak live now to former England captain and Sky Sports pundit Michael Atherton. Athers, good morning to you. It's probably good evening to you down under. I hope the jet lag's not too bad for you. Look, big news overnight. It's always a nervous wait when you hear of any potential injury, particularly for us Englishmen and English fast bowlers. But how big a boost is it for England that Mark Wood is now declared fit?
Well, it's a big boost that there's nothing that's shown on the scan. Whether they'll risk him for Perth is a question that'll have to be answered over the next few days, because he's had hardly any cricket and just bowled that in that first day of the Lilac Hill game. And so they've got a few days, 5 or 6 days before that first test to work out what they're going to do there. But the fact that there's nothing shown on the scan, although you have to be a little bit careful there, because with Josh Hazlewood, who I'm sure we'll come to in a minute, originally they said there was nothing on the scan, and now they're saying obviously he's out the test. But it's a big boost for England today in those two ways. Firstly, that Mark Wood seems to be okay, and secondly, that Australia have had a big blow around Hazlewood.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to Hazlewood in a second. Look, how much do you think then Wood's fitness will impact the selection in the first test? If you were the selector, would you risk him, knowing that he's just had this little niggle, and as you mentioned, he hasn't played too much cricket lately?
That's a big question. It's pretty hard to answer right now because there's still 5 or 6 days. So I think ideally what they were hoping for was to hit Australia hard with Archer and Wood right at the start. The first two tests are at Perth and Brisbane. They're the two fastest pitches. They're the ones where the fast bowlers are really going to dictate terms and decide the game. So, looking at the side they picked for their warm-up game against the Lions, it was Archer and Wood. And that was a clear signal, I think, that that's ideally how they'd like to go. But as you say, he's played so little cricket. I think it's 15 months or so since he played red ball cricket and only bowled those 8 overs on that first day. So there's definitely risk there. So they'll just have to see how he goes over the next few days. England are planning 2 days off after this Lions game, and then the 3 days build up to the test match, and they'll just have to see how he comes through those. Right now, you'd have to say it's a risk, but if he comes through that, what they'll want to avoid doing is what they did with kind of Broad and Anderson last time, 4 years ago, where they delayed playing them and found that they were chasing the series, having gone 1-0 down. So in an ideal world, they'd love to have Archer and Wood together, I'm sure, for the first test. But, there is that risk, clearly, given how little cricket he's played.
And let's talk about the Australian side. Injuries, again, is what we're talking about. And it's such a shame, but it feels like a lot of these series are often dictated by which sides can stay fit. For Australia, already without Pat Cummins, now revealed overnight that Josh Hazlewood will be out of the first test. Do you see this as a real opportunity now for England to take advantage of the fact that two of their frontline bowlers, so experienced in Ashes series and so much quality, are going to be out?
That's a massive blow for Australia. I mean, you're losing more than 600 test wickets with no Cummins, no Hazlewood. Obviously, they've got a good backup for Cummins in Scott Boland, who's played a fair bit, had a bit of success against England in Australia, not so much in the last series in England. But now with Hazlewood, that's two, big frontline bowlers missing. And they're going to have to go to either Brendan Doggett, who'd be making his debut. He's been in good form in the Shield so far, but hasn't played Test cricket, or Michael Neser, who's just played a couple of Test matches. He's been brought into the squad because Sean Abbott was earlier ruled out as well. So, we're not even got to the first Test, and already, that kind of fitness and injuries is a big story. And it was always likely to be that way, given the age profile of Australia's team. The bowlers are all kind of mid-30s. And the fact that there's going to be 5 tests coming in 2 months. You've got actually decent breaks between the first 2 games and the second and the third test. But then there's 3 tests that come quickly around Christmas and New Year. So that kind of fitness and injury element was always going to be a big part of this series.
And obviously, look, you mentioned the age, Michael Neser over 30. Again, that's been something that point's been made quite a bit in the build-up to this series, the experience of the Australian bowling attack in particular. But could that work against them with a long series and a potentially grueling 5-day series?
Yeah, well, that's how they've gone. They've kept faith with this obviously very successful group of players, but they're all getting, to an age together in the side that they picked for the first test, the squad that they picked. There's only Cameron Green, I think, who was under 30 years of age. So it's, the age profile of the Australian team is interesting. And, injuries are part and parcel of sport. They happen anyway, but clearly when you get to that age, they're maybe more likely to happen if games come thick and fast. But the fact that we've not even got to the first test, we haven't bowled a ball in anger yet, and all the stories really have been around injuries and possible injuries to whether it's Mark Wood, Sean Abbott, Josh Hazlewood, Pat Cummins. It's going to be a big theme of this series. I mean, ideally, you want to see the best players playing. I'm sure we'd all love to see, all the best players fit for all 5 games, but clearly that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, we certainly would. I'm sure there might be a few English fans out there, Athers, who might be quite pleased to hear the news of Josh Hazlewood missing out as well this morning. Look, I wanted to get your opinion on the preparation. Quite a lot's been made of England's, say, lack of preparation. They've got the game against the Lions going on right now. We've seen, I think it was yesterday, there was a few wickets taken from short balls that just I don't know whether it just felt like they were playing against an aggressive form of batting, whether Australia might play a very different way. What do you make of the preparation that England have gone into this Ashes series and just playing the one game on Australia's soil?
Well, it's unorthodox. I mean, teams of the past would have played 2, 3, 4, maybe state games before the first Test match. I mean, Ben Stokes, was on record the other day as saying that times have changed, which they have. Schedules are almost impossible. England were completing a white ball series in New Zealand, and that's given them precious little chance to prepare. The one thing you'd say for this England team is that that's the way they've done it in the recent past. They've had a good record in the first Test match of series. They prepared for the Pakistan tour in Dubai, flew in and then won the first test there. So they've shown they can do it. I mean, most of us who've played a bit of Ashes cricket in Australia would suggest that you need a bit kind of longer to acclimatise here, but England haven't had that opportunity. But I don't think they'll use it as an excuse now either way. It's just how it is. And they've tried to use the 3 days at Lilac Hill. They've been playing at Midland Guildford Cricket Club, which is about 5, 6, 7 miles out of town, the old Alex Stewart's old club. They've been playing there, and they've tried to get the most out of those 3 days and then move into the Test match. But first 2 tests are going to be so important. You want to hit the ground running if you can, because I think they're going to dictate the course of the game.
With the preparation, is it a case of England looking to potentially protect their bowlers and their bowling unit to make sure they're not overcooked or risking any injury, but then on the flip side of that, you got batters lacking time in the middle. I think, Joe Root and Harry Brook, I think, are at the crease right now, but got out very cheaply in that first innings England's Lions. Doesn't give them much time in the middle, that in the middle practice that they need for the Ashes.
That's how it is. That's the nature of the modern game. There are players of my generation and earlier generations who would have had very different preparation running into the first test in the Ashes. Would have played 3 or 4 state games. But times have changed. The schedules are such that that's almost impossible now. So, you can say it would be better to have that kind of preparation, but that's not how it is. So you have to deal with the reality as it is, and they're trying to get the most out of the 3 days that they've got at Lilac Hill. And fingers crossed they can hit the ground running at the Optus Stadium in about 6 days' time. And
look, Athers, you'll know what Ben Stokes is feeling as England captain. He's going into an Ashes series down under. What will be going through his mind now with a week to go? What will he be focusing on?
The fitness of his players, obviously. They've got a massive decision to make around Mark Wood. There'll be fingers and toes crossed that there's no injuries between now and then. And then I'm sure they'll look at the opportunity that's before them. You know, no Pat Cummins, no Josh Hazlewood. Said that's over 600 Test match wickets missing in that first Test match for Australia. So they must see this as a big opportunity and a chance to try and put some pressure on Australia. Straight away, you know, there's been a little bit of criticism of the Australian selectors flying around here over the last week or two. And if England can start well, you know, and that they can kind of create some doubt there early on. So that's sure what he's thinking about before the start of the series.
Well, Athers, look, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much and enjoy your time over there.
Pleasure.